I'm Christine Ladner and welcome to Foreign Language Teaching News. I'm here at Bentley Elementary, one of the 14 buildings I teach 5th grade World Language Exploratory in. Today I'd like to talk about some research on input and output based activities and go through also an example. And finally we'll have a subplan idea. So today's article is a study in the January 2019 Asian Pacific Journal of Second and Foreign Language Education. It found that input-based activities and output-based activities were equally effective for vocabulary learning and retention. There was a control group in the study, meaning that they didn't get any language instruction. There was one input-based group, meaning they got only input-based activities and were not expected to speak the target language much, if at all. And there was an output-based group, meaning they got input-based activities and were expected to speak the target language during activities in class as well. The experiment lasted 9 sessions of 50 minutes each, and at the end they were tested by having them produce, that's speaking or output, the target language vocabulary. So they had to remember it and produce it. Although both input and output-based groups outperformed the control group, who received no language instruction, there was not a significant difference in performance between the input-based and output-based groups, and they tested them midway through and at the end, and neither midway through nor at the end was there a significant difference in performance. So, now no one denies that input is important, but it's the output that people disagree on. So Van Patten in the 1990s criticized teacher-led output-based activities as, quote, putting the cart before the horse. In other words, speaking before you have a full framework of the language. On the other hand, Swan in the 1980s, which was before then, said output drives the student to see second language components, and that makes the student alter their output. Both of those things contribute to acquisition. So, people don't disagree. This is not the first time that input and output have been kind of argued about, is output really necessary or is it even valuable? So how can the study inform our instruction? Well, first of all, this is short-term acquisition. It was just 9 weeks that was measured. We don't know if there's a difference over more than one semester, so more research is needed. But the good news is that the study gives us at least some data points supporting the idea that either strategy is effective. So you can do whichever you want, and there's some research to back you up that it's no worse, or it's no worse than the other strategy. Personally, my students really enjoy output activities like acting out skits. When I say I need 2 actors for this, the hands go up. These are 5th graders. They really like to act and ham it up, so a lot of them want to do it. Even the shy ones. I mean, I get probably 90 or 95% participation, like almost everyone. Sometimes there's 1 person or 2 people that don't want to do it, and that's okay. So I don't really force everyone to do it if they don't want to, and that's fine. But they really like it, and I get a lot of complaints when we run out of time because everyone didn't get their turn. But that's my teaching style, the style that suits me. Every class period I offer several opportunities for output, some of it review stuff, some of it the new stuff, but if it's a summative assessment, like something you have to put in the grade book, I offer a one-on-one speaking alternative for shy or anxious students. A few students need this, but not that many. Okay, and here is a tip. If you do want your students to do output-based activities, think about the quality of the activity and reflect on how you can make it more relevant, fun, and give them a voice. So this is something I always try to work on. I know I always need improvement in that area. But for example, when I teach favorites, I always teach music that's relevant for almost everyone, especially those students who don't participate. So that increases the relevance. To make it more fun, we really put a lot of motion in our ASL kind of gestures, like for ma chanson, so I do this for ma, for my, and song is this, like a sweeping motion on your arm for song. And then préféré, we don't do the ASL because favorite doesn't really, it's not that iconic, so I use like the heart side, like both hands like this makes a heart. See? One hand like that, one hand like that. So that's a hard sign. My other hand is holding the phone. So, and finally, the students tell me their favorite, and they don't parrot my sentence. So there's no fun in parroting my favorite song because it's not their favorite. I actually want to know what their song is. They're actually communicating. It's not just needless stuff. I'm learning about them and who they are. So there's a reason why they're telling me this, so I can know more about them. So that gives them a voice. They're choosing what they say in their sentence, and that makes a big difference. Okay, and finally the subplan tip. Hello, this subplan has to do with Fortnite Dances, and it's pretty engaging. It's a nice subplan, and here's how it works. First, I get a link to a Fortnite dance video, and when I click share, I make sure that it starts at the point I want it to start at. So click start at, and then whatever point you have it at, it'll make the link start there. Copy that, then you email that to the sub. Then if you don't have the ability to email that to the sub, then you find some way to link that and give it to the students, or just have it already set up in your classroom. Next, so this is an example in French. Here's an example in German. Here's an example in Spanish. There are so many in Spanish. You know, Spanish speakers love to dance. And an example in Japanese. One cool thing about Japanese is it's a very good katakana practice. So you've got this link for the sub, then you leave the sub instructions to either write this on the whiteboard or project it. You can make a worksheet. I don't really like to make worksheets. I like to make the students write everything from a blank piece of paper. So have them write it in their notebook. Then no one loses anything, and you can do a notebook check pretty easily. The title is Les Danses de Fortnite, dances, the Fortnite dances, left side your target language, right side English. So the object is to write down the Fortnite dances in the target language on the left side and then figure out what they are in English. So the first one, I'll use French as an example. This one is T'as perdu. You have students write that in their notebook or on their paper, then watch it. Then they figure out what it is. So t'as perdu is very different than the English, take the L. So when you come back from being absent, you can kind of analyze what the French actually means versus what the English actually means and the differences in that. Okay, then you go on to the next one and the next one and the next one. Okay, then here's some examples in German. Der Wurm. Examples in Spanish. And Orange Justice, a classic in Japanese. Okay, and then the students have that. Make sure that the sub knows it is okay for the kids to get up and dance. It is okay if there's longer pauses and some discussion, and kids, shouting out the answer, sharing the answer with the class is sort of how this sub plan works. So it's okay to shout out answers. It's okay to get excited. It is kind of the point. The reason I like this sub plan is because it engages some kids who are kind of game players and maybe not that engaged in school. If someone is not that engaged in school, they find another thing to engage themselves in, and that's usually video games. So someone who's not engaged in school, they'll, maybe kind of come to life for a few minutes during this lesson. And it's a way for them to connect. And also, so it's good for those kids who aren't normally engaged in your class. Also, it's good for kids who are maybe not even allowed to play Fortnite at home because there's this cultural phenomenon of, this certain game at this time. But
The dances are something that's very much not shoot 'em up and not violent or anything. So it's something that's actually okay to look at in school, okay to talk about in school and engage in at school. So the kids who aren't allowed to play Fortnite, they'll feel included in this Fortnite lesson, and they'll kind of understand a little bit what people are talking about instead of feeling left out. So one thing about keeping your kids from things that are harmful is they actually do feel left out sometimes. So it kind of makes those kids feel included. And I've talked to two parents on either side of this, the Fortnite issue. One totally lets her kids play. This is fifth grade. Totally lets her kids play Fortnite, and she thought, oh, this is a great thing to do. They'll really enjoy it. And the parent of a student who's not allowed to play Fortnite, and the student actually said, do I have to write down this uh, Fortnite stuff because I'm not allowed to play it? And I said, well, I'll talk to your mom. The mom, very supportive. She thought, it's great. There's nothing violent about it. So it's fine for him. So it's just something really harmless. It's a great engagement sub plan. Use it as a regular plan, but it's, I think, a good sub plan because they're going to be paying attention. And that is it.